All right, our day is done. We have completed touring most of the facility, at least the facility that's available to get into. Even a little bit of it that we're not supposed to have been into, but we didn't know that at the time. They later barricaded it off because of safety reasons. So I guess we're lucky that we didn't fall through the floor or the stairs or something while we were in it. So anyway, we're just going to recap a little bit our thoughts about the prison, what we thought today, what we found, and just kind of in general a wrap up. So I'll let little Alice start. Okay, we're here with little Alice.
Hey.
We're going to do just a little recap, as I said. What are your just initial thoughts, like an overview of the day in the prison?
To be perfectly honest, I feel that the biggest feeling is that we've been very much spoiled by our past adventures at OSR, aka the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, and the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. They're such big, grand spaces, and they've been preserved so much better than this space, unfortunately, which has been the victim of tons and tons of vandalizations over the years, which has just led to so much of the deterioration, as well as the building materials are different and has also added to the deterioration of this building. And so of course, going from such large, grand spaces where we have access to nearly everything to, even though it looks very grand, it is very grand, but it's very spread out among many different small buildings. And much of those small buildings is either partially restricted or restricted completely, where we can't get into them at all. And as Bryan had mentioned, a big part of that is for safety reasons. While we were walking through, there were many staircases that we saw that were just so dilapidated, missing stairs, broken stairs. It was very obvious. I mean, there were even cave-ins in certain areas. It is obvious that there are huge security risks in these buildings, so they absolutely had good reason to restrict certain areas. But as an adventurer, it can be very frustrating when you're used to such large, grand, accessible spaces coming into a much smaller space that's accessible to you. You feel a little spoiled, but overall it was a very fun adventure. We saw a lot of cool stuff, we learned a lot of great stuff, so overall I'd say this adventure was a success.
Okay, great. For me, my general assessment, I would start with Evie and the team that organized it. I felt like it was very well organized. When we got here, the check-in and everything went really smoothly. It was just a few minutes. It was nice. We did not need to do makeup and everything, but they had a spot for makeup in the far building over here, which they opened up shortly after 8 o'clock, and everybody was able to pick their room. Some people set up wherever. And for the most part, people were left alone, it appeared, to do whatever they wanted and set up, do makeup, shoot, whatever. The only restrictions were the safety problems that we talked about. So I give them a thumbs up. As for the prison, I was disappointed. From the reviews, they had talked about marble and the beautiful interiors and everything, and the entire admin wing, which is here in between cell block west and east. This is west, east over there. Probably can't see it in the video, but you can see the roof is caved in. They said last week they had another cave in, and a lot of the cell blocks had 2 or 3 inches of water in them. Unless you're wearing waders, you're not going in. A lot of it is roped off. As little Alice said, a lot of the staircases are completely rusted through and caved in, not safe to go up and down. There's a number of buildings. We couldn't get in the hospital, very disappointing. We were hoping to speak to John Wayne Gacy's ghost, but such is life. They're worried that the roof is going to cave in at any minute, so they're not allowing that either. We even tried to talk them into it on a little private thing, just slip us in with one of them, and they said no. So I mean, like Alice said, I think there's very little access compared to Mansfield Reformatory, but it's still a 160-year-old prison that was dilapidated and abandoned for, I think, 20-something years, that nobody did anything to it. And they're doing the best they can with it. And the state, I believe they said, is restricting a lot of the access for safety reasons. So better that you don't fall through the floor and break your leg or worse here. So overall, I would say today for us was a success. We got a lot of good video. We had a lot of interesting encounters, and it was just an overall fun day. And it's the first time we've been out since COVID. First time I've been back with little Alice in 7 years, since I moved overseas to Dubai, and I'm now back in the US. So this was our first big adventure, and Maria came along. Maria enjoyed. So the three of us, I think, will have a lot of future endeavors. So you'll be seeing us all quite a bit in the future. So it should be fun, hopefully. At least we're going to have fun. I don't know if you will. So on to what most people are probably really wanting to hear about. Let's start in general. What did you think of the paranormal activity here? What did you expect before we came, based on what I told you?
So one of my big things when going to a new location, and by new, I mean that I've never been there before, is that I make it very clear to Bryan that no spoilers. And he was very good on that and only provided one spoiler, and that was for safety reasons, that he told me in the prison that John Wayne Gacy's ghost is here, and all of the dangerous things that could potentially happen because of his presence. And so things like that are very important for me to know so that I can keep myself and everybody safe. That in terms of, I don't want to learn any key names. I don't want to learn any key information. I want to go in as blind as possible so that any information that I receive, I know is actual information I'm receiving and not necessarily something that my mind just recalled that I had been told. So a lot of this was a surprise for me. I knew that this prison was very old, that it had been, up and functioning in Civil War times. So I did have that expectation of how old the prison was and what kind of people might be in the prison. But again, I didn't have any specific sort of names or information to cloud my readings, which was really great. And basically, whenever I go into a new place, I expect anything to happen. I don't, I don't have any sort of expectations other than that I expect at least something to happen, because we have yet to have an adventure where we had nothing happen. That's never happened. We always have at least something happen on our adventures. Even some of the most simple adventures, we always have something happen. So I just, keep an open mind and see what there is to see and just experience whatever it is we end up experiencing. And this prison did not disappoint, y'all. This was a very hot spot. Of course, as I said before, we're very spoiled by OSR. So the bar was set very high. So OSR, I would say, is literally an 11 out of 10. I would say the prison is a 6 out of 10. In terms of hotspot activity, but a big part of that is because the haunting, the ghosts that we experienced are not as violent and in your face as a lot of the ghosts at the OSR. However, a big part of that is also because we didn't get access to a lot of the buildings, and I'm sure that my experiences would have been different if we had access to some of these buildings, especially the hospital, to interact with Gacy. I'm pretty sure that would have really jacked up the score a lot more.
Because there was several buildings we could not get into that we would get up to the chain link or the barrier that prevented us from going further. And you said you could feel a lot of activity or something really bad. I know there was several times we turned around because you felt like it was too intense for it to go further. You didn't know what to expect exactly. So yeah, we probably would have found more.
Yeah, and a big part of the reason why I had us turn back at some of those points is because this is our first time back since COVID happened, as well as this is our first adventure in about 7 years since Bryan moved to Dubai. And also because this was Maria's first adventure, the last thing that I wanted to happen was to have something really horrible happen. And horrible,
Like this.
usually, unfortunately for me, entails being violently possessed. And yes, you heard that correctly, violently possessed. So there were some situations where I started to feel energy or vibes or whatever you want to call it that scared me to where I felt that was a potential level where something like that could happen, and I just didn't want that to happen in this adventure. Normally I do push myself a lot harder on adventures, which is why sometimes that happens, but because this is our first time back, I wanted to be as safe as possible. I wanted everybody to have a great experience, especially because this was Maria's first experience, so that's a big part of why there were some points
Yeah,
where
she
I
was
like,
quite the
"We need to
trooper.
turn around."
Quite the trooper. She's never been in an abandoned place, not her cup of tea particularly. She came along without complaining.
She was very brave.
She went with us through all of the bad places, basically, except after lunch when she was taking a nap. She was tired. But the whole morning, she went everywhere. Every dark place, every cell block, everywhere we went, she went. So, yeah, she's quite the trooper. So that's good. I'm glad that you were cautious and, made sure that she had a good experience as well as all of us.
Absolutely. And
So-
a big reason why the score is also lower for the prison is because areas like OSR and the asylum also have non-human entities. And what this means is it's not a human spirit. It's, whatever label you want to call it. I personally call them demons. It's basically something that has never been human and is not human. Some sort of entity, energy, whatever, and they are way up the charts compared to human spirits, human energies. And there was only one entity that we encountered, and after we encountered it, we did corroborate with the volunteers here, and they call him the Tall Man, and they only have that one entity here, as opposed to OSR has tons, and it's constantly being infected by new ones. So.
And that was located here in the west cell block.
Yes.
We went in, and you can turn to the right, and there's a storage area or a holding area, it looks like, where they used to process people or something. And back in the back, what looks like a storage closet with like shelving,
shelves.
just shelving in it,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And that was the one where when you went, I went in there, and for me it was nothing. I looked around, I was like, okay, there's nothing here. It's, boring. You went in and were like freaked out when you got over there, came out and were shaking, trembling, and everything. So that was pretty intense.
Yeah, that was tense, and as I said, non-human entities are a far more intense experience than human entities. So just even if I encountered a powerful human entity like Gacy, it would still not compare to a non-human entity. Even a weak non-human entity is going to be way more powerful than a human spirit or entity. So, encountering something like that is very frightening. I was physically shaking. I've been doing this for years. I'm a seasoned vet, and I still get the crap scared out of me. So, it's really nothing to play around with. And that's part of why I was cautious. Is bad stuff can happen. So, we just played it safe. And when I realized what I had run into, I just got the hell out of Dodge.
And interesting to me, because before our first OSR experience years ago, I had no knowledge, no nothing. I didn't even think about it. I would definitely say I was skeptical. And even here, as in the reformatory and at the asylum, the staff corroborates a lot of what you say. Mm-hmm. You will tell them stories about things that you heard or saw while we were wandering, and they know. They've heard it. The one interesting thing is what you told me when we got in the car here recently about your battery packs.
Oh, yeah.
Which they said that was common here.
And it's honestly common at most haunting sites. A big thing is that any haunting or any sort of paranormal activity feeds on energy of some sort, and electricity is a form of energy. I have several of these little juice bars that I use to charge my phone, and I brought a bunch of them because I know that spirits do drain energy, and I just wanted to make sure I had enough of them to charge my phone at the end of the day. I didn't use any of them, and as you can see, there's only like one light on this one, and a lot of them there's no lights, which indicates like about to die or dead battery.
So they were drained while we were wandering, and you were encountering people talking,
yes,
etc.
And these were all fully charged this morning when I left the house. All 4 of these lights were blue, lit up.
Yeah, and they said that's very common here, so
Exactly.
normal.
In order for spirits and entities to do basically literally anything, it uses energy of some sort, whether it's a battery, whether it's the energy of the actual location that they're in, whether it's humans coming to interact with them, taking energy from you. That's why if you go to a haunted place, even if you're not a sensitive person, you'll sometimes feel very tired, very drained afterward. It's because they're literally like sucking the energy out of you so that they can continue to exist and to interact with you or with other people or with things, such as, you know, turning on and off lights, slamming doors, talking, moving, any of that. It costs them a tremendous amount of energy. So all that stuff that you see in, like, you know, the movie Poltergeist, where stuff's flying around and all that, is so unrealistic because the amount of energy it takes in order to do something so simple as flick a light on and off is tremendous. So, you know, something like a chair flying around is just absolutely ridiculous and just could never physically happen, honestly.
Excellent. All right. So, in closing, what somebody that's coming here, what would you tell them to expect? Probably nothing, right? Most people, like me, if they're like me, they're going to experience nothing. If they're sensitive, if they've experienced things before, then they may see and hear a lot, right?
Absolutely. So I would definitely declare this a hot spot, meaning that if you are a sensitive person, you're probably going to have a handful of interactions. Whatever those interactions may be, you're going to experience something. If you're not a sensitive person, you're probably not really going to feel anything other than, you know, maybe you walk into a room and something doesn't feel quite right, or maybe you just feel almost like you're, like, you know, walking through sludge or something at the most. But yeah, I wouldn't say that based on the areas that we had access to that anything is tremendously, terrifyingly unsafe. But all the same, I always do caution people to, you know, use common sense, be respectful, and the number one rule, do not antagonize the spirits. Do not do it.
You can bring some things with you to help, some stones or some personal object like a rosary or something. Like, what did you bring?
So I actually personally brought my little pack here.
Well prepared.
Oh yes, I am always well prepared. So I have this cute little pouch that I keep everything in, and I have a variety of stones. One of the things that I have is a red coral necklace. Coral is a very good protective property.
Oh really? I have a couple of red coral or white coral, red coral things that we picked up in Seychelles. I didn't know that. Coral was good.
And I also have selenite, which is very good for healing. So I brought this personally for myself in case I had any sort of encounter that left me feeling very wonky. This is a good quick fix to kind of help get you back on
Now, I read
track.
amethyst was the same.
Yes, amethyst is the same, and I do have a chunk of amethyst in here. And because I am largely a spirit, a fire elemental person, I have burned my amethyst. I do put some of my gemstones in my cauldron when I do spells in order to have them be a part of it. So that's why the amethyst looks a little bit weird. And most importantly, I have to keep it in this little fun lucky tag package right now. But inside of here is my very important rites of exorcism medallion, which was blessed by the old Pope. This is basically my big guns that I bring out. This is a special medallion that was specifically given to me by Scott from OSR.
Oh.
Basically as an apprentice learning from him how to better handle myself in spiritual situations. And it is so powerful that the reason why I've been keeping it in this cute little pouch is it has already eaten through 2 steel necklaces. And so I basically have to keep carrying it around in various little pouches because it'll eventually burn its way through everything that I carry it around in. It's very, very powerful, and I always caution people not to touch it.
Very, very interesting. Well, I guess if you're watching this, you'll have to make your own judgments about all of this. I will swap with you. I think for me, I'm definitely skeptical, but I'm also realistic that there's a lot that you don't know, that I don't know, and I've learned a lot walking around with little Alice in these places, with Scott talking to the staff at these different places, and also some of the other models that we used to work with at OSR that were also picking up and receiving things. There's definitely been some strange things happen. One of our young models fainted one time. We've had near possessions, I think, happen. I don't know. I guess you just have to take what you want. You know, some people are going to say it's all bullshit. It's an adventure for us. We enjoy it, and I hope you did too. But, you know, if you come to here or any other place like this that's experienced a lot of trauma, I would say that would include like the concentration camps, because I know when Marie and I went to Terezin in Prague, it was very oppressive, even for me. I can't even imagine what little Alice would go through in a place like that. But I don't pick up anything in specific, but it's very, very oppressive. You can just feel the weight of it, and you just know. So anyway, we'd recommend that you come do the tours. They offer tours here twice a day, I think. A variety of different tours, depending on the day of the week. I'll put a link to the website at the bottom of in the comments for you, or actually in the description. I'm also going to timestamp through the video a little bit so that you can jump around to see the different parts of the prison and some of the different events, because there are some points where little Alice interacted with specific people who gave their name to her, which was interesting. And they were in 4, I think, total, right?
Yes.
And they were all in different buildings.
Yes.
And then there was also quite a few encounters in solitary. No names, I don't think they're right, but
Daniel.
But there was a lot of encounters there, a lot of almost like stories that you were getting out of the cells, which was interesting. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Take care, subscribe, come back, see what we go next time. Bye-bye.